You're listening to the Fed and Fearless podcast. On today's episode, I'm chatting with Johnston about how to fearlessly start your own nutrition business, even with a full-time job and twin toddlers at home. So stay tuned. Welcome to the Fed and Fearless podcast. I'm your host, Laura Schoenfeld, a registered dietitian, nutrition business coach, and online entrepreneur with over 10 years of experience in online business. And I'm here to show you everything I've learned about creating a life and a business that nourishes you. On this podcast, we'll talk about the lifestyle habits, practical strategies, mindset shifts, and leaps of faith required to build a healthy body, a powerful mind, a strong spirit, and a successful business. Hey there, welcome back to the Fed and Fearless podcast. I'm Laura Schoenfeld, your host as always, and we have an awesome episode for you today, especially for anyone who has ever been hesitant to start their own business or do something in their life because of fear or because of the barriers of time. My guest today is Johnston. Catherine is a registered dietitian, certified personal trainer, and virtual nutrition coach. She helps adults with gut discomfort from IBS or IBD create a personalized, whole-person focused wellness plan to feel their best and create the life they want. Catherine grew up in the upstate of South Carolina, enjoying fresh peach ice cream, garden-grown green beans, homemade dill pickles, and wild blackberries. She still lives there with her family of 4 and 2 pups. As a full-time working mom, Catherine understands the challenge of balancing responsibilities while still prioritizing her own health and wellness. And Catherine is one of my nutrition business accelerator students who had a lot of potential barriers that might have gotten in the way of her joining the MBA program. So as you guys can hear, she has a full-time job. She also has her own business on the side, and she has twin toddlers. So she's a very busy person, not a lot of extra time to be spending on growing her business. But something that really impresses me about Catherine is that she's not using that as an excuse to not take action. So we work together inside the MBA program, and she is working through the content at her own pace and taking action at her own pace, but not letting the complexity of her schedule get in the way of her pursuing her dream of having her own business. So if you're somebody who's ever let either fear of putting yourself out there or fear that you don't have enough time or enough energy to start your own business, but it's a dream that you have, then I know that Catherine's story will be really inspiring to you. So I was super excited to have her on the show, and I can't wait for you to hear her story and her perspective. Without further ado, here is Catherine Johnston. All right, everybody. Well, I am so excited to have with us on the show today, Catherine Johnston. Welcome to the Fed and Fearless podcast, Catherine.
Hi, Laura. Thank you for having me.
And Catherine and I were chatting a little bit before we hit the record button about what we were going to cover today, because this podcast has taken kind of like a little bit of a twisty, turny direction since I started it back in, I want to say it was 2019. I actually forget now. I feel like the last couple of years have been like a total like time warp. But the intention of when it started has shifted to now what we do. And a lot of what we talk about is facing fear and doing things that are challenging and doing things that are possibly not typical of other people, like not necessarily something you see a lot of other people doing. So that's what Catherine and I are going to talk about today. And just really quick, so the audience can get to know you a little bit better, what brought you to where you are today as far as being a dietitian, a personal trainer, and helping other people specifically with their gut health?
Thank you for asking. So becoming a dietitian was, as you know, kind of a long road on its own. I really didn't know what I was getting myself into, but it was really sparked by my college soccer coach who just talked about nutrition and fitness all the time. And I was like, oh, I didn't recognize that these things were related. I kind of thought soccer was its own entity. I went out and did and didn't recognize that I had to fuel myself for that. So that really was like my first intro to nutrition. But from there, I went into clinical after my internship, which turned into a corporate wellness job because clinical was really not for me. And from corporate wellness, I went into more of a telephonic role, which we probably will talk about when we talk about my transition to private practice. But when I chose to pick up private practice, I think at first it was just that general kind of like you talk about in the MBA of like, I want to help everyone with everything. And I'm just going to do all the things because I know some stuff about everything. But I specifically chose gut health. And I do think I'll probably even niche that down further as I continue to dig into it. But I really like gut health because first of all, there's so much to it. It's not just, I mean, I think probably there's lots of different nuances and branches to every type of nutrition that we can practice, whether it's cardiac or kidney or whatever else. But with gut health, I think it's kind of interesting because it's like very instantaneously gratifying sometimes. Whereas other things is kind of like that long game, like getting that cholesterol down or even losing weight can kind of be the long game. So I do appreciate just like the cause and effect side of gut health at times. Sometimes it's more of a healing process, but also with my own gut health struggles, that's kind of something that I noticed even working with other people, but also in my own life, like going to the doctor and being kind of dismissed over just IBS or just saying like, hey, yeah, go drink more water or eat more fiber. And as an RD, I was like, okay, well, that's not super helpful for me. So I think it was kind of a combination of like just my personality, liking solving problems, but also just my personal experience and encountering a lot of people that just really needed that extra support and honestly just needed someone to listen to them instead of dismiss them about their gut health issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've had a number of conversations about gut health on this show, and I feel like it's a very common theme that a lot of people that end up coming to a private practice dietitian or nutritionist are people who have already kind of gone through the ringer of medical lack of treatment, I would say, because, as I'm sure you know, a lot of times it's like, oh, this is just how you are, or, oh, you have IBS. And then it's like, okay, well, what do I do about it? Nothing. This is your life kind of thing. So I think that's a really common story where people have these gut issues and they're just told it's normal. So I know that part of what we want to talk about today is your journey to starting your own business. And I know from what we've talked about and what you have shared on social media and all that, that you're a mom. And I know that there was probably a pregnancy, motherhood transition. I don't want to say break. I don't want to make assumptions, but there was probably that piece of your journey that came into play. So I'd love to hear about that since I don't know anything about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I was sharing my professional history, but I transitioned from clinical to BMW, where I was in corporate wellness, and it was rather intense. I loved working there, but corporate wellness as a field is typically kind of intense. There's a lot of presentations and like programming, and I was the first dietitian to work there. So there was just a lot to it. But I would say like, I love that job and I put everything I had into it. And simultaneously, we had a hard time getting pregnant. So I was going through IVF and like doing my shots and then doing like a presentation until like 7 p.m. So it was just like this very intense roller coaster that I was on. And actually, Laura, I listened to one of your podcasts. I think I can't remember Lindsay, maybe, that you interviewed about stress. I thought that resonated with me a lot because during that time, like I was so stressed, and that probably looking back definitely played a role in my infertility for sure. But had the twins, finally got pregnant, achieved this goal because I am an Enneagram 3 and, it's all about achievement. So I got that goal, and then I was pregnant, kept doing my thing, but I was always telling everyone, like, I'm definitely coming back. I'm going to do this like bigger program. I'm going to work just as many hours, do all the things. Yeah. And then I went on maternity leave, had the twins, like literally went into labor while I was at work early, and everything kind of stopped. And so I think I had that time to like sit back and just recognize that I now had competing desires in my life. I had these little people I was caring for. I had all these clients and patients and programs that I developed at my job. And then just things like myself personally, my spiritual walk and my hobbies and gardening and cooking and all the things that I love. And so having that kind of that time to step away gave me that space to really evaluate what I wanted. I did start applying for like work from home jobs. I was like, I still want to work. I don't want to, like, I love being an RD. I love what I've worked for here. I love helping people, but I don't want to like negate or fail to care for my other responsibilities that I have brought into this world now. And so, taking a pause here, everyone always tells you like everything changes when you have kids. And like, I wouldn't say everything changed, but like something inside me for sure changed because I'm so like typically objective and like, okay, they can just go to daycare all day and I'll be good, which works so well for a lot of people. But for me, that just changed something something changed. So all that to say, I did go back to work and I worked for about 3 months full time. And then they started asking me to increase my hours, work 2 nights a week, come in at 4 a.m. some days. And I was like, okay, this isn't going to work anymore. Just, I love that job. I still love those people that I worked with. But I was blessed to find a full-time corporate wellness work from home telephonic coaching job. So it's not quite working as an RD, but using a lot of the RD skills as a health coach. But I don't want to say it's easier, but it is. It's a little bit less brain power, less creation. I was doing a lot of that at my corporate wellness job. So when I took that step back, even though I was still working full time and still had a lot of the same responsibilities, I kind of had this space to be creative and be like, okay, I have these skills and I have this passion and this experience, and I'm seeing all these other RDs do these awesome things. I want to get in on that. So I remember starting my Instagram page. Like that was the scariest thing in my entire life. I literally just had the handle for 6 months. I was like, okay, I might have a corporate job or a corporate private practice one day. And so I just sat on it. And then I was like, okay, so I have this Instagram handle. I'm going to make a post. So I didn't ever come out and be like, oh my gosh, I have a private practice. But I just started making little posts. And then people at church or friends from high school would be like, oh, I really liked what you posted. And I was like, oh, okay. So that went well. So I would kind of just build it up a little bit. I remember how hard it was to do the first reel ever. It was the worst. I started with little recipe ones because I cannot show my face. So I think that reflection is so important for me moving forward. I have to look back and be like, okay, but that was so hard just to make that post. And that was so hard just to make that reel. And then signing up for the MBA, I was like, I have small humans that eat a lot and need a lot of diapers. I was like, what am I doing? What if I fail? But and my husband, I have to call him out because he's super supportive. And a lot of people in my life just are encourage me in whatever I do. And I think that's just great to surround yourself with people like that. But I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And we're Dave Ramsey anti-debt people, but I literally got my Amazon credit card and put it on there. And I think I told you this, but I made the investment back. And part of that was knowing that I had this debt to pay, this investment in my business. I don't even like to call it a debt, this investment that I needed to pay. And so that kind of propelled me forward. Okay, I need to get clients. I need to retain them. I need to do this, that, and the other. I need to increase my prices. So I don't know. I don't know if that even answered your question, because I can't remember what it was, but I feel those competing desires, kind of channeling those, and then also using that power of reflection really helped me to get where I am now. And I'm hoping to carry those things forward as I grow my business and continue to go at my pace.
Mm-hmm. It's so funny whenever I hear a mom say that something like posting on Instagram was the scariest thing they've ever done. I was like, is that really true? Because I haven't had my baby yet. And I'm like, I don't know. Sounds like having a baby, especially twins, sounds pretty hard, sounds pretty difficult, and makes, in my mind, of course, like I said, I haven't had my baby yet, but in my mind, I'm like, if you can have a baby, if you can have 2 babies in you, posting on Instagram sounds like that should be a breeze. So it's just interesting. And I'm not saying that to make you feel bad or anything. It's more just the way my brain works is oh, that stuff's so easy. And it's possible. I've been doing it for 10 years. So, now it's easy, right? And Instagram wasn't really a thing when I first started. So it was a slower entry into it, because people were just using it to I don't remember if you remember when everyone would post these stupid filtered out at a restaurant picture of my meal, or oh, nice sunset at the beach or something. And it's that's how Instagram started. And that's, it evolved to what it is today. And so I was already on it, using it and running my business when it started to become a business thing. So it is funny to me to imagine that someone like you, who's, like I said, given birth to twins, which in my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing and so hard. And it's in my mind, having twins would be everything else is easy in comparison. So I'm curious what your perspective is on that, because like I said, it could just be, me having done what I do for so long, it feels easy. And the idea of having a baby is oh my gosh, this is going to be so hard. But you having your twins, maybe that feels easier to you. And it doesn't seem like it's something I'm not saying it would be easy, but it would be that doesn't scare me as much as business stuff does.
That's really interesting. Yeah. I don't know. I think one thing that I can say was just like markedly obvious is that after they were out of me, I got this like supernatural, like God-given boost of energy. I don't know what it was. Like I would just like, because I was so, and you may be feeling this now, Laura. So, but I know I was so tired in pregnancy and I like had nothing left. Like I would come home from work and literally fall asleep on the couch at like 7 p.m. And that would be every single night. And so I was super sick. I threw up until they came, like the week that they came, I was like still vomiting. So for whatever reason, like I think after I like the hormones got normalized or whatever else, like my energy levels were and honestly have been like super high. And so that is definitely a piece of it. It's just like feeling energized. I don't know though. Like that's a really interesting thing. And it may just be like a personality thing. Like you said, maybe it's because you have been doing it so long. I've asked myself a lot of times, and I asked myself back then, like, what are you scared of here? Because this is just, I mean, who cares what anyone thinks? But I really think what it was, and honestly still what it is sometimes, and I'm sure they won't listen, but like friends from high school, right? Like, or people from college or ex-boyfriends or like whoever is on Instagram, like comes across my thing. I'm like, what are they going to think of me? And then I've like thought one day, I'm like, but really, like, what are they going to think of me? Oh, she's running a business. Like, so what? Oh, she looks really silly in that reel. Okay. Well, so, I mean,
yeah,
I made money off that reel and got 3 clients. So, I mean, what do you want to say? So
Mic drop on that
right,
one.
I know. But I don't know. I think it's, and I see that a lot in other people like on Facebook groups and stuff who are wanting to start a business. It's just that fear of starting. And really it's fear of man. It's just being afraid of what people are going to think about you. And I kind of came to the point, it didn't just like happen. Like it definitely was a slow progression, but I had to come to the point where I was like, I don't care what people think of me. And really that's important for lots of ways. And maybe that's like why moms can, I mean, this is going to be, I don't mean this is an offensive way, but maybe it's like why moms can drive minivans. Like you just like stop caring, right? Like you're like, okay, this is fine. Like, I don't care if anyone doesn't like my car or my mom jeans or whatever else, even though they're cool now. But so yeah, I don't know. It's definitely been a progression and a growth experience. And it's not just in business that I've had to grow there. I think that's become, and you and I were chatting some before, but even just like in making my opinions or like deciding how I believe or being vocal about, you know, maybe a controversial stance, and it's still a work in progress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think it's probably a lot of experience, right? Like even just the idea of putting yourself out there, or before we started recording on the podcast, it's like kind of thinking, okay, how do you show up and share your story on a podcast and not feel nervous? And not that I'm saying Catherine was nervous, but it's a very common thing for especially my clients that come on and chat on the podcast that are not used to doing these interviews. It can feel really scary. I used to be so scared, and I sometimes still get like, I call them the podcast sweats if I'm on somebody else's podcast. And so it's something where, you know, when you first start doing it, it feels really scary. And then when you get used to it, it's like, oh, this isn't that big of a deal. So I feel like motherhood's probably the same way. And again, I'll let you know in like 4 months Please update. But it's like, you know, if you've never done it before and you don't know what you're doing or how you're going to do it or like how it's going to go, I think that's like probably the common thread, right? Because even with giving birth to a child, before you've done it, you don't know you literally have no idea. It's like, I literally have absolutely no idea what to expect. And even if you have had a baby before, every birth is different. So it's like, you know, just that lack of control about what's going to happen. And like, you can do your best to prepare. You can do your best to like take care of all the, you know, cross your T's, dot your I's kind of thing. And it still can turn out totally different than what you expected. And I feel like that is kind of the thread between, you know, someone like me who feels, I mean, it's not like I don't do stuff that quote unquote scares me in my business. I'm always pushing myself to do stuff that makes me like out of my comfort zone. But that stuff doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like it's such a big consequence to me versus like bringing a human into the world and like, you know, the possibility of like physical, you know, harm that can come during birth and that kind of thing, like that kind of stuff, because I've never done it and because it feels like it doesn't really matter how much I prepare. There's like no control I can have in that situation. To me, that feels more scary. But for someone like you who's done that and, you know, I mean, gosh, I can't even imagine being nauseous through your whole pregnancy. I was so miserable the first, gosh, I think it was like week 18 where I started to feel better. And even just the fatigue, it's like, oh, this is so annoying. I can't imagine working a full-time job and feeling that way. Like, I bring it up almost like not to just like point it out on you necessarily, but anytime I see somebody who like is in the MBA program or is talking about wanting to start a business or wanting to do things with their business, and they keep talking about how afraid they are, and I see that they've had kids, I'm like, why are you afraid? You've done like the hardest thing in the world. Like literally there's nothing to be afraid of. So, and I know we wanted to talk about that because there are a lot of people out there who want to start their own business, want to, have something, whether it's on the side or their full-time job or just a little bit of extra spending money here and there. But they're like, either they're afraid to do it or they look at their situation. Like I know you said full-time job and twin toddlers, and that's when you started yours, and you made an investment in a coaching program at the same time. So there's a lot of people that would get to that decision point of saying, do I want to do this? Do I want to make that investment of time, money, energy? And they would say, I can't because of these factors. And you did it. So I would love to hear a little bit about like, what was the process like to make that decision? Since I'm sure it wasn't just this like, this will be easy, I'm just going to do it, right? Like I'm sure there was some contemplation that went into that decision.
Sure. Yeah. And like kind of backing up a little bit, the reason I even decided to start was because a former coworker reached out and was like, hey, do you see clients one-on-one? And I sat there and I remember just like thinking for a minute, do I? And I was like, yeah, I do. Just give me a couple weeks. I got to get some things figured out.
Just got a bank account set up.
So that was literally what I did. I like got the bank account, got practice better, like followed some business coaches on Instagram. And I was like, okay, I got this. Like started listening to some podcasts. I had been doing it. And I had to like give myself that boost of like, how to do this. You've had great outcomes. You've coached people before, like you have a degree, you have 8 years of experience. Like, why are you fearful? So like, and like, honestly, seeing other dietitians doing similar things, I was like, all these other dietitians can do that. And like, I mean, they're all awesome and they're doing great. Like, why can't you have a little piece of that pie? And so I tell her all the time, thank you. I was like, you gave me that boost I needed to like propel into this. And for sure I made mistakes or like did things I would not do the same again with that first couple clients. But I started like marketing myself a tiny bit on Instagram. And then just especially like acquaintances, like, second degree acquaintances, I started getting several people coming in. I was like, oh no, what am I doing? And then you did, I don't know what you call them, Laura, what are those things you do where you have like little free sessions?
Oh, probably one of my trainings that I did.
Yep. One of your trainings. So I don't know, your awesome funnel or whatever caught me. And I saw that and I was like, ooh, I've got to do this. This is free. Like if nothing else, I'll get some free tips and we'll be good to go. And so I found that. And that was literally after I'd vetted a couple of different coaches and I just got an icky feeling or felt kind of like I got repitched by the same coach a couple of times. I was like, oh, I'm just like not really that important. Like you're making me feel. So, but I found
like they'd forgotten who you were and they were like approaching you like a new person.
Yes, it was very uncomfortable. And I was like, hey, remember when I told you this? Oh yeah, like you don't know who I am. So it was just, that was an icky feeling. And so, I mean, you can't be best friends with all the people in your MBA. And I totally understand that, but at least like, don't make that mistake. So, but anyway, so I found the MBA and like did your free training. It spoke perfectly to me. Like just one of my favorite things that you did was just like, everything was just, organized and it was like neat. And it was like, this leads to this, leads to this. And I just need those like processes, your perfect processes. So that got me in a little bit. And then obviously led me to the MBA program. But to make that decision, kind of to your question, I don't know. Like I've been pitching different programs to my husband for a little while. So he was kind of used to it by that point. Because, that was it. We have joint finances. So it's definitely the us decision when we make decisions like this. But I was like, I found this one. I really just think it's the one. And like, it was within the price point I felt comfortable being able to pay back soon. I don't like to do anything that's going to be the long game there. And then, you and I have some similar beliefs and that really helped me feel comfortable. And then I remember I got on the college gym and like my kids were like pulling my hair and like running around and yelling. And she's like, it's okay. It's totally fine. And like, she was so low key and low pressure, but just explained to me like how everything works and that it can be self-paced. And I don't have to like, I can present things to be evaluated, but I don't have to be in this like perfect timeline. And I don't know, it's something about that just spoke to me because one thing I've learned by starting my business and even just like pushing forward is that I don't have to get everything done in like 5 months or something. Or it doesn't have to be this like perfect process that I follow, and, I'm alongside all these other people doing the exact same things, I can do it on my own pace. And I think about the MBA as like this really great book that I finished. And then I was like, okay, now I need to go back and read again and actually pay attention to the details that I learned by going to the end. So that's kind of what I'm doing now, is just like trying to go back through and pick up things, or download different PDFs that you provided us, and just like work through those and just fine tune it, because truly niching was like the hardest part for me. So now that I kind of got to that, I'm like, okay, I think I'm going to go this direction. I probably need to fine tune it more, but I'm going to just start like moving in that direction.
Yeah. Well, it's ironic. We just did our niche implementation call in the group yesterday at the time of this recording. And that does tend to be one of the biggest challenges for most of our students. Now, if somebody's already come in with a niche selected, then it's an easy step, right? They're already there. But if you're coming in from scratch, a lot of times that's like a big stumbling block for a lot of people. And I'd be curious from your perspective, having gone through the full program and now you're maybe going through it again, or, kind of like, it sounds like you took a lot of it in and then processed it, and now are kind of like, all right, now let me take some action on these particular steps. From your perspective, what would be the benefit that you've had from choosing a niche? Because I know like a lot of times when you haven't done it, it's like, I don't know. This seems really scary. What if I make the wrong decision? Like, and I get it, because I've changed my niche like a lot in the last 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
But it's that decision that's like, all right, I'm going to go with this. What did that allow you to do with your business? And I know you're on your own path, your own journey, your own timeline, but like, what did it allow you to do for yourself?
Okay, so choosing my niche definitely gave me the permission to say no to people that weren't my ideal client, which was empowering in a way, and also gave me a sigh of relief, because I didn't feel like I just had to like grow a profit or take everyone I could possible just to pay back what I had taken out for the program, or to pay for my Practice Better platform. But also it's given me, because I struggle with imposter syndrome a lot. Like who would have guessed a dietitian with imposter syndrome? And honestly, just I've learned a human with imposter syndrome. Apparently everyone feels this way. But as I like am learning more and like becoming more specialized, I'm feeling more confident. And so I think that niching really just is giving me confidence, and continues to give me confidence as I dig in. Now with my competing desires, wanting to be this mom that like sits on the couch and watches Bluey all day, but also this mom that, cooks these awesome healthy meals for her family, or this human that like serves at my church, or whatever else I'm doing. Like when I have all these competing desires, niching has given me the freedom to not be awesome at everything. And so when someone comes with me with eating disorder questions, or I don't know, like wants to talk about bariatric surgery or weight loss or something else, I'm like, hey, yeah, like that's not my specialty. And like, that gives me a lot of freedom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like that's a really important benefit that a lot of people underestimate before they've made the choice, right? Because like you were saying, a lot of people, especially dietitians, I don't know what it is about dietitians, but it's like we're trained to have imposter syndrome. But it is difficult. I wouldn't even say it's difficult. I would say it's literally impossible to be an expert about every single topic that somebody could come to you with health. And if you're constantly working with clients where you don't know the answers to their questions, you don't know enough about the beyond the baseline of the condition that you're working with, that doesn't help build confidence very quickly, right? Versus if you narrow your scope, and it's not to say that other questions might not come up, like, humans are complicated. Even if you're focusing on gut health, it doesn't mean that someone might not have disordered eating tendencies or also want to lose weight. Like, we're not saying you have to be this like, I only know about gut health, and if you ask me a single question about weight loss, I'm going to just like, fry my circuits. But I just feel like it's so much, even personally, the times where I've niched, it just makes it so much easier to help people. And there's less of this like, oh shoot, now I have to go like research that question now because I haven't had that question before. Whereas when you're getting repetitive type of questions, repetitive challenges with, the scope of people being unique people, it just makes it easier, and you start to build that confidence in yourself that you do know what you're talking about, that you can help people. And if you don't choose a niche because you're like, well, I'm not an expert in anything, you're not ever going to be an expert in anything, right? Like, we don't have enough time in the day, especially you being a mom of twins and have another job, it's like there's literally no chance that you would become an expert if you weren't narrowing your focus. So I do think that's a really important part for anyone who has that fear that like, I don't know enough about a specific topic to focus on it. It's like, that's actually the exact reason you should pick a topic, right? It's like, if you don't know about a topic, it's because you didn't spend enough time with it. Even as dietitians, we get trained very broadly. So it's like, yeah, you might have like a broad basic knowledge of everything, but if you want to be an expert, you got to focus on something.
Yes. And I was in 7 years doing broad clinical, broad, corporate wellness, where, like you said, like the doctors would refer them to me for anything. I would have like eating disorder and hypothyroidism and post-bariatric and just weight loss all in the same day. And I was like, oh my goodness, I can't, like you said, I cannot be an expert, but I did try to be. Yeah. And yeah, definitely like focusing, but not eliminating everyone. And I love that in the program you mentioned, like, you don't have to say no to people that aren't within your niche, but maybe just say, yeah, like my specialty is this, but I think I think I can help you. I really would like to work with you. I think that we'd be a great fit. You're my ideal client, or whatever else I want to say to them. So I think giving myself permission, because I was already working with clients when I came to the MBA that weren't within my niche. And so that's another reason that some of my transition has been a little bit slower, because even in my social media posting or everywhere else where these clients I was currently working with were looking to for advice, I didn't want to all of a sudden make this like 180 turn and be like, now we're going to talk about digestion. And they're like, wait a minute, like I was really liking your like body positive talk and stuff. So that's definitely been, and I think I posted this in one of our chat room or conversations or something, but like just the power of social media, me recognizing like, that's not like my business is not an Instagram influencer and I don't want to be. So recognizing like that can be so independent, like that's a marketing tool, but it's not my business. And so that was a huge distinguishment to make too, of just the fact that like that's that kind of independent entity there.
Yeah. Well, even with, a specific focus with the niche and everything, it's like you could still talk about body positivity. It doesn't have to be this like, oh, I only talk about gut health. Because like I was saying before, there's going to be people with gut issues that also struggle with body image. And that will actually be relevant to them, right? It's kind of like, yeah, most of my posts now are business related, but we still post about health stuff. I still post about pregnancy stuff. Like people are interested in more than just like, tell me how to do a sales call or something, right? So I think that's something, at least in the NBA program, we always try to give people, it's like, all right, here's some like guardrails so you don't just go off on this tangent where you're wasting time and energy and not really getting results, but they're just getting you in the right direction. And then you get to decide, like, what does this look like for you? Because for you, I know you were talking about this before we hit record, that you tend to be a person who sees a lot of the gray area with certain topics and doesn't necessarily have this like super polarizing, like, this is my view, I'm drawing this line in the sand. And I do think, I promote standing up for what you believe in, right? And also, it doesn't mean you have to stand up publicly for every single thing you believe in. Like, I think I definitely used to be a little bit more spicy on the internet before 2020. I feel like the last time I said anything that was super controversial was when I was commenting on the Super Bowl halftime show in 2020. Back when that was the most controversial thing you could talk about. So, and then after all the COVID stuff and political stuff, I was just like, I literally do not want to be involved with this. It's like I don't have the energy, especially this year being pregnant. I'm like, this is not my job to like commentate on political stuff, or I mean, at this point, it's like all political stuff. But it's like, I think, my personal perspective is I pick and choose the things that I want to be quote unquote polarizing about. And that's honestly something that I see, especially in the more advanced entrepreneurial groups that I'm in, people that are, making like somewhere between like high 6 figures, 7 figures and more in their business. They do the same thing. It's like, I'm not going to just be this like, I have an opinion about everything kind of person, but the things that are relevant to the way that I help people that I do think are actually important for them to know, or if I see them doing something that's harmful, like I feel like it's important to speak out about that. Those are the kind of things that they get more polarizing about, right? So I think there's this belief that it's either like, oh, you either have to go on social media and just like say what people want to hear to make them happy, and try to like be vanilla and like not step on anybody's toes. Or you go on Instagram and you're like, I have an opinion about everything. And, just like creating controversy to create controversy. And my feeling, especially after the last several years of being like observing kind of the toxicity of social media sometimes, it's like, no, I get to choose what I want to be putting a flag in, right? Like I'll put a flag in and say, if you're starting a business or if you want to create scalable programs, you need a niche. Like, yeah, there's businesses that don't have niches. So I'm not going to say like it's impossible, but why would you make it harder for yourself, right? Like, why not take the easiest route? So that would be something that I'm like, all right, I'm going to plant my flag and say that's an opinion that I have. But it's like, I don't have to then start telling what my opinions are about politics or like vaccination or stuff like that. It's like, it's not my business I don't need to be an influencer about every single topic that exists in the world. And so anyway, a little bit of a tangent, but it's something that I've really noticed just ramping up a lot, and people saying, oh, if you have a platform, you have to use your voice about certain things. And I'm like, no, I don't have to. I have things that are going on in my life that are my priorities and my values. And I don't need to be like a political commentator as part of what I do in my business. Like I'm here to serve people and help people and do what I'm good at. And I don't need to have an opinion about everything. So that's my opinion. And I know like that's my opinion about opinions, right? I'll draw the line in the sand about opinions being something that you can decide what you want to share. But I'm curious how you feel, because we were talking before about the difference between choosing to not share about something because you're like, I'm just choosing not to, versus having something that you're like, ooh, I really believe this, but I'm like nervous because I don't want to get backlash. Because there's always the possibility of backlash. Like I hate to say it, but you could say the most benign thing and somebody's going to disagree with you, and they could like send their minions, to your page to like blow it up or whatever. So what's your feeling about that as someone who's a newer business owner working on, getting more presence online?
Yeah. So that's definitely something I'm working through still. Like you said, still new, still kind of deciding. And I think for me, a lot of the gray area, like I just don't really, even in my personal page, I'm not really talking about politics and stuff, because truly like I am very moderate, middle ground on lots of things. And so I think that there can be lots of, like you said, I mean, I don't know where someone has been to like make their opinion where it is. So I don't think it's necessarily my job to comment on what they believe. I can decide what I believe, and that's great, but I don't necessarily feel the need to sway other people on that. I think that where I struggle the most with the gray area though, Laura, is just in dietetics and nutrition and wellness and all these things, because there are lots of people who are putting their flag very firmly in the ground and being like, no, this is my way, but this is also what should be your way, or you hate me, or you hate everyone, or you hate this group of people. And so I struggle with that because I'm like, no, I actually really love people. And I really, I feel this way, but I don't feel that way that you're telling me I feel. So I think I struggle a lot with that. And just a big piece of that is just staying off of social media, not scrolling, not looking at other pages, unfollowing things that really don't bring me life, because I'm seeing this stuff, but like the people that are following me to be current or future clients are not seeing all that stuff. They're not saying like, oh, Catherine said this, so she hates all these people. They're not saying that, but I'm like, I guess like self-evaluating or judging because of what I'm seeing. And there's some very aggressive voices out there that are kind of polarizing within dietetics. And that can be super challenging as you're trying to start a business, because it's like, okay, yeah, this is my niche, but like within my niche, what are like my values, or what are my, I guess, like black and white areas if I do need to choose. But because we know like our clients are so diverse and they come to us with so many different backgrounds or harms or goals, I think it's important, even just as dietitians in general, whether people feel this way or not, like I think it is important to embrace some of that gray area and recognize, from what I've seen, what the clients I've worked with, the places I've worked, like everyone is so different. And we can't really just decide, like, I can't just say like I'm anti-weight loss. I can't say that, period, because I've worked with people and seen times where that was a life-saving event. So a life-saving, whether it was physical life or even just like, oh my gosh, like I feel confident, awesome, I'm going to go start a business and do all these awesome things and have more kids or whatever else, like that can be life-giving. So I just feel like that's one area. it's an example that I can't just say like, I'm anti this. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Well, and it's funny that you bring that one up because I do think that's an area we talk about on this podcast a lot. And I have kind of an interesting perspective on that in the sense that I think for some people, the, anti-weight loss or anti-diet or whatever you want to call it, for some people, it's really important and it's really helpful and it's beneficial. And for some people, it's not. And I think it's funny because on one hand, you might feel like, oh, well, I have this gray area opinion, so I don't really have an opinion. But in our field, saying that you're not fully like 100% on board with a particular perspective is actually an opinion, right? It is actually taking a stance to say, no, I don't think that that's true in every circumstance. And like, I remember we had a fellow NBA student, Alma Simmons, on to talk about like kind of the gray area between the whole HAES and intuitive eating movement and people that want to lose weight. And we definitely got some backlash about that, mostly from other HAES intuitive eating dietitians that feel very strongly that that's the way and that if you question it, you're wrong kind of thing. And, at the end of the day, if that's what they want to believe, that's fine. I think I'm similar to you where it's like, listen, if that's your belief, I'm not going to like try to convince you otherwise. But as you said, I've seen it in other people's lives where it's like even a modest amount of weight loss gave them a huge amount of benefit. And it's like, that's where it starts to get the polarity. I don't think being super polarized is necessarily the same thing as having an opinion, right? It's like, if you don't want to necessarily camp with, oh, it has to be like never intentional weight loss. Like intentional weight loss is always bad. It never works. It always fails, blah, blah, blah. Like that's an opinion. It's a very strong opinion. You can say, I don't agree with that. That's actually opinion, right? And that's sometimes in our field, a very controversial opinion, depending on who you talk to. And so I do think for anyone, and this doesn't necessarily just apply to dietitians and nutritionists, I think for anyone who wants to get into a service-oriented field that has a variety of perspectives and opinions, because we're humans, we're not ever going to agree on everything ever. It's like you have to get comfortable with saying, okay, like what are the predominant messages out there that people are getting? And do I agree with that? Do I disagree? Is there nuance that I feel is important to share? And that's where you can start to form your stance on a topic. And it doesn't have to be, well, I don't think intentional weight loss is bad 100% of the time, so that means I'm pro-diet, right? Like I feel like we're in this world where it's really tempting or, kind of pushed to be like, you're either pro or against. You're either, black or white. Like, it's just like, this is the way that a lot of these issues develop. And there's more of that now. And it's like, okay, how can I present my perspective in a way that challenges some of these polar things? Because you might also feel similarly about the people who are like, weight loss is, everybody should be, this particular type of weight. And if you're even remotely 2% body fat more than what's quote unquote healthy, then you should lose weight because it's going to kill you. Like you could also be against that, right? Like you could also say that's not healthy. So I think for those of you listening who might be struggling with this or maybe feel like Catherine does, where it's like, well, I don't fall into a camp, so maybe I don't necessarily have an opinion. I truly believe that we do have opinions, right? Like it's like your opinion could be, it depends on the circumstance. Here's some circumstances where that perspective is valuable, and here's some circumstances where it's not. And it's like, why don't we figure out what the solution is for the circumstance the person is in, rather than saying this is the way it is all the time? Or, if you disagree with me, you're like, anti-health at every size or anti-intuitive eating or something like that.
Right. Yes. And I think that's definitely where I find myself. And also, I think the hardest part is even within the field. And I think that you and the MBA do a really great job of kind of fostering a positive environment where people aren't like, there was lots of different beliefs within our MBA cohort where I was like, oh yeah, like we don't feel the same, but like there was no animosity. And I just wish that as professionals, I guess this is my tangent, like anyone listening, if you are a nutrition professional or health professional, maybe just like approaching others with respect and maybe not just like engaging in the call out culture or posting things just for the purpose of making other people feel bad about what they're offering, and just maybe like even utilize the DM. Or actually, I was listening to a really great podcast where one of the writers of the Intuitive Eating like handbook was saying like, have a conversation, like call people on the phone and talk to them if you have differing beliefs, and listen and hear, instead of just saying like, this is how I believe and I'm staying over here and I don't want to hear anything that's outside my box. So I think it, like you kind of said, Laura, in our culture, we're very polarized, but there definitely needs to be some maybe just hearing of other opinions or some open-mindedness, I guess, involved there.
Yeah. And on the other hand, it's totally fine if you are, committed to your opinion, right? I mean, I still think it's good to be open-minded, but I also feel like there's certain things where you do want to stand your ground, and it doesn't mean that you have to fight with somebody, right? It's like, I don't go around like arguing with people about the things that I believe generally. Now, if I post it on my own page and somebody wants to start a fight there, usually I'll either like, engage a little bit, or I got in trouble one time because somebody had commented that doesn't follow me. It was just, I was like, you're just attacking me. So I just blocked them. I didn't even respond. And then one of their friends DM'd me and got all angry that I had blocked them. And I was like, they can share their opinion on their own page. Like my page is not this like public forum for people to attack me, right? Like I don't have to put up with that. So it's just funny how it's like, now it's this whole, if you block somebody from getting mad at you, now you're like, you're silencing people. It's like, they have their own page. They can post whatever they want. So it's one of these things where it's like, I'm not out there going after other people and their content, right? Like, and I honestly can't even believe that there's people that have time for that. It's like shocking to me, honestly. But that said, like, if I feel the need or the desire to share something on my page, it's like, all right, well, I might have an opinion about that I want to share. So I think it's, just having that mindset of like, everybody's opinion counts. Doesn't mean it's right. Like, obviously I don't have to say you're allowed to have your opinion, but I don't have to agree with you. And that doesn't mean I hate you. It just means I don't agree with you, right? It's like, I think there's this belief that it's like, if you disagree, you're a hateful person or something. And it's like, I just see things differently, or I have a different opinion, and it's okay to explore other things. Like I spent a lot of time in the last 2 years exploring alternative positions on things that I was like, well, maybe I need to see this differently. And I might have come out of it being like, no, I actually still believe what I believed in the first place. I don't think that's right. And so I think that open-mindedness, but also being okay with like standing firm in your values and your perspectives. It's not easy, because I feel like our culture is like very aggressive about, if you don't agree with me, you're a jerk kind of thing. Or that like cancel culture stuff. It's like, that can make it really scary. But I also think if you are the kind of person who knows that everybody has the freedom to share their perspective, right? Like at least currently, that's how our country is set up. And you respect other people for their opinion. I super respect people who are very much like, intentional weight loss is always bad. I'm sure they have their reasons for believing that. I don't agree that it's always bad, but I see why there's value in that opinion. I see why it's valuable to bring that part of the conversation into the discussion. Like, there's certain people that absolutely that should be their focus, and they should not be trying to lose weight. So it's like, for me, I look at a lot of this stuff to say, okay, there's value in these alternative opinions. It doesn't mean that I fully agree with everything that they say, but I'm glad that we can have these discussions, because it's like, I think anytime it starts to get like, you're not allowed to have a different opinion, that's where it starts to get scary, right? It's like, ooh, it's not really the way that society advances, by like shutting down alternative opinions. So, again, I'll reel that tangent in, but it is something where if somebody is wanting to grow an audience to attract people into their business, they are going to have to say stuff that people disagree with. Because it's like, literally, you could say, chocolate ice cream is my favorite ice cream, and somebody could be like, chocolate ice cream sucks. It's like, that doesn't mean that it's not my favorite. Like, I'm allowed to have this favorite ice cream, right? So it's like, it really doesn't matter what you say. There's always a possibility that somebody's going to staunchly and aggressively disagree with you. But I also think it's important, because I really feel like sharing perspectives is the way that we as a society learn and grow and advance, or whatever advancing means. But like, becoming a better society comes from us being able to talk about our perspectives. And sometimes our perspectives change and sometimes they don't. And I just think it's something where, especially in the dietetic space, I don't know why it's gotten so like heated in the last few years, because I don't remember it being like this when I first started. But it's something where I hope that it'll kind of hit a breaking point and then it'll be like, oh, wait, maybe we can either talk about it or we can agree to disagree and it's fine.
Right. Yeah, I hope so. I really do, because I don't like the division. I am right there with you. Like, I definitely think there are some values and there are some in my life where I'm like, yeah, this is what I believe. And you shared in the MBA, like, it's important sometimes to reflect those, because you don't want people to work with you who maybe don't have that same value, or if that's like a game changer for them, it's not a good fit. And so just like being okay. And as someone that maybe I've recently learned that I'm kind of like, especially on social media, fall into that people pleasing space where maybe not so much in real life, but like, no one wants to be called out. Like, it's not fun. Even the situation you brought up where it's like, don't comment on my page. Like, I don't want to see your negativity. And that's only happened to me a couple of times because I really haven't been super controversial. And usually when I say something about like not really loving a diet is where like that usually gets people upset. But yeah, I think just kind of understand, like you said, just understanding other value and like realizing that other people's opinions come from somewhere and like they're valuable, but also sometimes using, like, for me, I like to use research onto other areas just to kind of solidify what I already believe and be like, okay, like, let me look at the counterpoint, as you kind of mentioned, especially over the past couple of years, and weigh out the science or the evidence or, what's true about the other side. And that can kind of give you either strengthen your opinion that you already have or help you maybe see something new that you didn't see before. So I think a lot of that just comes from some humility. And that's something I try to carry through my business, even working with each person. Like, I don't go into a client conversation and be like, okay, I already know everything about you. Like, here's your plan. Is coming in and be like, hey, like, tell me more about like what you're experiencing and like what you want from me and from this program. So yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah. Well, and to kind of like bring it full circle, I feel like that's another way to address imposter syndrome is it's like, you don't have to know everything. You don't have to have these like fully formed, never changing opinions. And in fact, if you're the kind of person that like sets an opinion and literally never even contemplates if you still have that opinion, that to me is a bigger red flag than being someone who's like, oh, I used to see it this way, but now after learning and seeing, clients and all that, I actually see it differently now. Like, that's the kind of mindset that I think if you bring that in between saying, okay, I'm going to focus on this area so I can really grow in my expertise and experience and knowledge. And I'm open to the idea that what I learned today is not necessarily going to be what I think in a year from now or 5 years from now, 10 years from now. It's like just being open to learning and being open to that collaboration with your clients. Like, that I feel is a very important part of eliminating imposter syndrome, because then you're not showing up feeling like I have to be this all-knowing expert. And if they ask me a question that I don't know, oh my gosh, I'm an imposter. It's like, no, I show up and I do what I can with the knowledge that I have. And if somebody asks me a question that I'm like, I literally don't know the answer to that, either say, you know what, that's out of my scope, but if you'd like, I can find a referral for you for that particular area, or say, nobody's ever asked me that before. Let me look into that for you and I'll get back to you, because I want to make sure I, do my due diligence to see if there's anything I need to share about that. So that I feel like is a really great way to overcome imposter syndrome, because you're really taking that pressure off yourself to show up as like this know-it-all, like never changing your opinion about anything kind of person, which honestly, that's somewhat repulsive to me when I meet people who are like, I know everything and I never have to change. And, I don't care what the evidence says. I'm always going to just like think this way. So, well, Catherine, I feel like we could probably talk a lot longer. So, and I know you have your kiddos to get back to, so I want to wrap things up, but just to kind of put a little bow on this conversation. So I think we've talked about a lot of things, including the fear of starting a business, the fear of putting yourself out there, how to overcome that fear, how to do a business, even when you're so busy with, even just having kids, like that's a lot of stuff, right? And so what would you say to somebody who wants to either start a business or has a business and has been hesitant to really put themselves out there, either because of the fear of criticism, the fear of like, I don't have enough expertise, the fear of I don't have enough time to do this? Like, what would be your advice as somebody who is doing it despite time barriers, opinion barriers, whatever we want to call the barriers that you've had to overcome?
Obviously I would say join the MBA because you'll get a great foundation. That's how I did it. But yeah, I mean, just doing it in the way that's going to work best for you. And whether it's doing a coaching program in the way that works best for you or delegating your time differently. One of the best things that I gleaned from my first go around of the program was just to not be afraid to delegate and to find those tasks that I don't have to spend all my time like mopping my floors every week or watching my kids. Some days I can take those, delegate that task to someone else for a little while and get done what I need to get done. So that time with them is more valuable. So I would just encourage anyone who is kind of on the fence or just struggling to obviously get support in whatever way that looks best for you, but to give yourself permission not to be like everyone else and to follow a cookie cutter plan. Do what you can do, even if it's just seeing one client really, really well starting out and using that client's money to like fund your platform. Like if that's all you can do right away, totally fine. But go at your pace and do what's going to work best for you and just work on kind of truly getting back to what your values are, whether it's to, be a certain way about a specific topic or just to help people. And I think like truly as most health professionals and people that I've talked with, like our main goal is really just to help people. So if we kind of keep the most important thing, everything will work out.
Awesome. And just a quick thing I'll add to that is to always step back and ask yourself, am I truly going at my own pace or am I letting fear stop me from doing stuff? Because I think that's something for me personally, I've had to, especially this year, I've had to really wrestle with, especially, even getting rid of some of the offers that I had that I used to sell or, temporarily. I don't know if they're forever gotten rid of, but for this year, there was some big decisions I had to make. And I had to grapple with that. Like, am I just afraid to do this? And should I do it anyway? Because I'm the kind of person that's like, all right, I'm going to face my fear and do it. Or is this like my intuition saying this is not what you should be doing right now, or you need to slow down, or you need to have space? And that's a new thing for me to learn, to really step back and be like, no, I need some space. I need some time. I need to slow down. I don't have to do it all right now. Which is a super valuable skill. And the flip side of that is saying, okay, but I'm also not going to just sit back and let fear stop me from doing things. Cause I think sometimes we can kind of like make excuses for, I just don't have enough time, but it's cause it's really like, I'm afraid. So again, finding that sweet spot of what do I have time for in my busy schedule, knowing that, I'm a mom of twins and that's a lot of effort and energy and work and time. You're not going to have the same time availability as someone who's fresh out of college, single, like living on their own kind of thing. And saying, okay, like what can I do with the time that I have that feels good to me, that isn't like, I'm holding back because of fear. So that's what I would add to that, because it's kind of this like sweet spot between those two things that I think people really need to find. And again, speaking of polarity, I feel like people tend to either go hardcore in one direction or the other. Either they get paralyzed by fear or they just completely ignore their own sense of like what's best for me, and they burn out. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you. Yep, I totally agree. And sometimes my reels are literally me making dinner for my family and I film it as I go because that's totally fine. So I just encourage, like you said, find what works best for you. Do not fit to anyone else's mold.
So where can people follow you? Because I know you've mentioned having Instagram.
Yes, of course.
If they want to check out what you're doing, or if they want to get help with their gut health and want to work with someone who does have a gray area perspective on things, how can people get in touch with you?
Absolutely. Well, I'm, as you said, on Instagram at Catherine Johnston RD. Very simple. And I will have more programs and offers coming in the future. So definitely follow along. And if you just want to chat, feel free to reach out. I love to find like-minded other professionals or just new friends. So thank you so much for having me today, Laura.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Catherine. And we'll look forward to seeing you all here next week on the Fed and Fearless podcast. Take care, everybody. Are you a nutritionist or dietitian struggling to figure out how much to charge for your programs and services? Maybe you've heard that as a nutritionist, you should just charge what you're worth. But this way of thinking can cause you to either undercharge your clients or work yourself into the ground trying to earn your worth. As a healthcare provider, you can't set up a pricing structure that forces you to sacrifice your own health and well-being in the name of your business and your clients. But I promise it doesn't have to be this way. When you download my free profit planning workbook, I'll walk you step by step through the 10-step process for determining the right pricing for your nutrition business. As a nutritionist, you have the power to completely change someone's life for the better. There's huge value in that, so it's time to stop underselling what you do. By following along with this worksheet, you can determine exactly what you need to charge to achieve your revenue goals with ease. I'll teach you everything I've learned about pricing from growing my own nutrition business to over $250,000 in revenue annually and helping other dietitian and nutrition entrepreneurs hit their first $10,000 to $30,000 months and beyond. To get your free workbook, go to lauraschoenfeld.com/profit, PROFIT, and grab your copy today, so you no longer have to wonder how to set the right rates for your incredibly valuable nutrition services. That's lauraschoenfeld.com/profit. It's time to make the money that you deserve as a nutritionist, and I can't wait to help you get there.